Hello YouTube, I'm Ben Lucas, and today we are going to show you a slider showdown. What motorized slider can you get that is best bang for your buck? All right, so today we have a couple different sliders with motorized options that we're going to be looking at. So I know that obviously Kessel Crane is the one that you want, but you're watching this video, so you probably can't afford it. So
I certainly can't.
So we each have motorized sliders. I'm here with my friend Stuart, and we're going to show you kind of a showdown comparing the different options. So I have the Syrp, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, the Syrp Genie. So I don't have the whole kit of this. Mine is a little bit mix and match of parts. But I'm going to be displaying this as best as possible. And Stuart, what do you have?
I have a setup from Konova, which is a Korean company that makes good, or hopefully good, bang for your buck slider setups. So I've got something similar. It's just one axis going along the slider. They sent me this and the slider recently, so we're going to see how they compare.
We have 5 different categories that we are going to be judging all of these on. So if you want to see the full review of the Konova slider, go over to Stuart's channel. There's going to be a link in the description, and I'll figure out how to get that iCard working. So go check out his video for a full in-depth review of the Konova slider, but keep watching this video if you just want to see really quickly how these compare and which one we recommend. Five different categories that we are going to be judging both of these motorized slider systems on. The first one is price. Syrp slider, this is a first gen. I know that the second gen came out, and I'm sure the second gen is fabulous. However, it is very expensive. This is the one I own, so this is the one we're going to be talking about today. The first gen Syrp Genie with the linear track slider. I actually have that attachment here. This with a similarly sized slider from them. Again, I don't have that slider. I actually have, what is it, a Cinovate slider. But a full Syrp setup is going to run you about $900. To get the exact same thing on the Konova, we priced this out, it's what, $400?
Yeah, so it varies $400 to $500. So these are the kind of main pieces of the motor system itself, and then you got the slider here, which is about 4 feet long. In total, between the two of them, it's $400 to $500, depending on if the slider is on sale or not. The motor system is $180 straight up, and then this varies a little bit between $200 and $300.
Awesome. So for price, it looks like we do have a clear winner at about half the price, the Konova. Thing number 2, let's talk about portability. How easy is this to actually carry around? So the Syrp, it's pretty heavy. I don't know exactly, all the specs are online, but it does fit neatly into your bag here. So you've just got the linear slider thing and this. So it's not small by any means, but it's definitely one tight little package. If you get the Syrp actual slider, it will have these little brackets on the end that you wrap the wires around. And so those little brackets are going to be how it gets the tension and pulls itself along the thing. If you don't have that, like I don't, then you actually have to use these. So it's just one extra little thing that you have to carry and futz with, but I am pretty happy that you can use this system on any slider, so you don't have to go out. I mean, this cost me a pretty penny, so I'm very happy that I can use the motion control system as is on any slider. All right, what you got over there?
Yeah, so you might think that this portability may be a slam dunk for the Konova, considering the main components are this big. But really, when I fill all of the belts and cables and components and battery that it takes to run this slider, it fills up something about this size. And when you compare that to this, it's kind of a toss-up. Portability, at least immediately, looks pretty similar between the two of them.
So I did notice that these don't really fit with this slider, so I've got to do it a little bit jankety, but I'll make it work.
I mean, that's a plus and a minus in my opinion, because it might be jankety, but you can actually attach that to any, you could fit that around any slider. Mine, it's like, well, you can screw it in and into these designed spots, and then that's it.
All right, so this was really easy to set up. You see that it holds a pretty substantial ball head. These are a little bit jankety. The most important part is that you keep tension. But it is cool that, again, it works on any slider. So we can just pop this guy on now. You cannot pump it all the way to the bumpers. It's gonna pull this cable, and now there's not enough, if you look on the other side here, there's not enough tension in this string. So really you need to give it a couple inches on either side. I actually now have to undo and redo the tension on the string on this side here, just to make sure you have a nice tight connection, otherwise it won't pull across the slider. Plus minus, there's a plus on this side, and then a minus on the other side. So that is what direction the slider is going to be moving. So right now it's 40 centimeters to the minus side. So I want to pull this all the way over here. And then so now what should happen is it will take 9 seconds and it should travel most of the distance of this slider. And you can save these as presets too, which is really cool. But let's hit start. Besides the wobble, which is totally my fault for not putting the legs in more level dirt, is that this is very, very tall, especially with the Manfrotto ball head that I've got going on. So you've got the linear track, you've got the Syrp Genie, you've got the ball head, and then you finally have your camera. That's a good 1 to 1.5 feet of distance in between your ground plane and the actual camera. So sliders really work best when you're doing shots where you can see that parallax action. You have foreground and background. And the size of this, unfortunately, just makes it very, very hard to get that.
Okay, so setting up the Konova system, it's got this great bag that came with it, but the problem is the feet for this slider are too wide to fit in the bag while it's on the slider. So that's kind of a strike for the Konova right away. Unlike Ben's setup, my setup uses a belt. It's a belt drive. So that's cool in that the tension is very easy to achieve. That being said, it's kind of fiddly to get installed. This great thumb screw to put the actual block that holds the belt on, but then once you do that, in order to put the belt on, you have to use an Allen key. So one more thing for you to lose, and one more thing to be fiddly while you're on site trying to get set up. So we're tightening that down, and that's just one of them. Then we got to do this all over again over here. I need to run the belt through the motor assembly. So what you do is you run the belt under the first one, over the drive gear, and then under the second one. And now that's ready to be installed on the slider. Now that that is ready, we can tension the belt all the way. And the belt actually doesn't need to be too tight because it's a toothed belt. Get it so that there's no obvious slack in the line. Okay, now that the motor's installed, we'll install the controller, which, strike for this one, we've got to attach another cable between the controller and the motor itself, so it's not all included in a single package like Ben's setup. Batteries, though, are pretty flexible. We've got an NPF battery that we just slot into the back. You can do any size, any NPF battery will power this really well. Even the small ones will power it for a very long period of time. Ben's is built in. This, you got a separate battery. So how did the setup go? Well, it took a lot longer than Ben's did. So there is a strike against it for that. There's a lot more small fiddly pieces, and that's basically just how it gets a belt drive to be possible on something like this. Now that we're set up, we are going to set an A and B point, which is essentially the virtual endpoints. You can go with the belt all the way to the end of the slider if you want and set that as the A and B point. That being said, I usually set it slightly in because I don't want it to just slam up against the end of the slider when we're doing a time lapse or doing a piece of video. So we're gonna do, I don't know, about a centimeter or so away from the end cap and set point A. And then we will run it. Unfortunately, this is the fastest it can move. Run it all the way. These end stops you have to set up every single time you turn this rig on. So unfortunately, if you set your end stops, turn this off, come back to it, you have to set the end stops again. The minimum duration, it can calculate that distance based off of what it has set for the end stop. The minimum duration of this length is 29 seconds. One thing you have to watch is this wire. Although, if you do destroy the wire accidentally, I believe it's just a standard Ethernet wire, so you should be able to just plug another Ethernet cable into it, and you should be good to go.
Look at that slim profile. Granted, there is a slightly smaller ball head, not by much, but the motion control unit is on the side, not on the top. So you can get very low to the ground slider shots. So that is a huge plus here. The minus, obviously, is, look at that goofball holding that cable.
Not so compact when you look at it like this.
Something that I will say that is nice for the Konova system is that you don't have to touch the camera on the slider while you're controlling it. Stuart, let's see those controls.
Here's the controls. What I can do at any time, like if I need to adjust the camera or I can change the ramping or looping, I can just stop it at any point, fiddle with that, and then start again.
All right, so right now we have this one here going on a nice time lapse, and that guy down there going on a nice time lapse. Thing number one was price. We have a very clear winner. The Konova is the winner on price.
$400 or $500 versus like $900.
Yeah.
So yeah, Konova wins that one.
So yeah, we got a clear winner there. Next one is portability. So the Syrp comes in one neat, tidy little package. It's got that one box, and then it's got the linear slider, blow it with the cable. That is it. So that thing itself is pretty big and pretty heavy, but that's all you have to do. What about the Konova?
The Konova's like lots of little bits here and there. So when you compact them all together, they're about the same size as the Syrp.
Another part of portability is how long does it take you to set up? It took me slightly less than 4 minutes, and it took Stuart
about 8 minutes. Yeah, lots to plug in, Allen keys to deal with. It takes a little bit longer for the Konova.
So portability, very, very close, but we're giving this one to the Syrp. Build quality. So the Syrp is made in New Zealand, and it was made to compete with the big boys like Kessler and Edelkrone. In that respect, they are intentionally trying to be a low-cost design, and I think they have really good build quality for the low cost of, $1,000. What about the Konova?
The Konova, it's manufactured in South Korea. It's good for the price. I wouldn't say it's outstanding build quality. I mean, the motor is very obviously just a kind of a stepper motor that they've adapted so you can bolt it onto the slider. It's nothing really special. It's solid.
So let's talk about the design and kind of like usability.
The Konova has some really cool things going for it. One, the whole system when it's on the slider is very vertically compact, even horizontally compact for that matter. It's not a big system. It has an external controller though. That controller isn't built into that whole package, so you've got this wire you have to deal with.
Besides the wire though, I like that it has the external controller, because if you need to pause mid-run, you can without touching your camera and getting that shake or, you know, fumbling the controls. I like that you can pause it and then go adjust the thing you need. That's really thoughtful design, so I'm gonna give that as a plus. The cable being obnoxious, that is not a plus.
The belt drive I really like personally. I think having those teeth so that the movement is really precise, really steady. Even if there's some slack in that belt, it'll still run perfect every time.
But the other half of usability is design and the interface of the software. So the Syrp Genie was super intuitive. I did not need the manual to learn it. I'm the type of person that does like reading manuals, but you've got the plus minus, you know which direction it's going, you've got the timing. Centimeters is a little bit, just because I'm American, how many centimeters long is this slider? But otherwise, I really love the design and interface, and I thought it was really well put together. What about the Konova?
Again, it's that price to performance thing with the Konova. The interface is serviceable. I did look for one function repeatedly that I could not find, not even in the manual, which is a back button. There is no way to back out of a setting you've chosen. So if I put it into live mode and I want to switch over to time-lapse mode, I actually have to turn it off, turn it back on again, reset my A and B points, which takes forever, and then go into time-lapse mode. So there is a huge downside in that there's not a simple just backing out of whatever you're working on the Konova's end. That being said, it's really cheap, so.
I would say the last thing that kind of falls into that design category is how fast the motor actually goes across the slider. The Konova slider, I have heard one or two times where it's like, why are you so slow? When you're doing time-lapse stuff, that's not an issue, but if you do need quicker dolly moves, or just because you're on set and you need to get it moving, it does have a slower motor. I will give the Konova one more plus point in the pro category. It can loop. When you get to the end of that slide move, it will go back the other direction, and it can do that continuously.
Forever.
Which is amazing when you're doing corporate interviews or anything like that, where you don't necessarily have a scripted shot, you just want something that's a little more interesting. You can do that by hand, but if you're a one-man crew and you need a motorized slider to do that, the Syrp Genie cannot do that for you. You've got to click the button, return to home, and then click the button again to send it back, versus the Konova automatic. So
yeah, you can set it up as a B cam and just it'll just run itself for the whole interview. It's super easy there, and it's built actually for that. Konova says it's quiet and it's got this repeating function so that you can use it for interviews explicitly.
Finally, let's talk flexibility. So when it comes to flexibility, the one thing that I think the Konovos wins at is that interview thing we talked about, being able to bounce off the end rail and go back. I think everything else flexibility-wise, the Syrp's gonna win.
Yeah, unless you count the external controller as flexibility.
That's true. So you've got the rotation. It can pair with the Genie Minis, so that you can get the 3-axis. They all talk to each other, so you don't have to do weird stuff. If you're running just the Minis, or I believe the second generation ones, it can all run through an app as well. So all of that is put together and expandable, and you can do a ton. The fact that the Konova is just a slider. Mm-hmm. It's very cheap and it does the slider well.
No rotation, it just goes back and forth.
Disclaimer, it's Konova, not Konovo. I'm gonna take responsibility for that one, my bad. All right, so we have these 5 categories: price, Konova; portability, Syrp; build quality, Syrp; design, Konova; flexibility, Syrp. So Syrp wins 3 out of our 5 categories. So
as it should, considering how much more it costs.
It's true. It is a higher quality, better designed, product, and you pay for that. So this is really meant to compete more with kind of like I said, the Kessler cranes and the Edelkrones, and it's a much cheaper alternative to those. Versus if you are an intro filmmaker and all you need is a good motorized slider, the Konova is a great piece of gear to have on hand. So my name is Ben Lucas. If you like this video, like and subscribe. Let me know what showdown you would like to see next. So far we've done speed lights, sliders, and soon I believe we'll be doing flex panels in the near future. Stuart, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I have a brand new channel where I'm putting this stuff out. It's called Immersed, as in getting immersed in a subject. So you can find me at immersed.show as my website, and then if you just search for Immersed on YouTube, that's where I'm at. So that's where you can find me.
And all of the links to him will be in the description. Again, like, subscribe, thank you so much. Leave a comment with what showdown piece of gear you would like to see next, and we will see you next week.
Cool. Does this? Who just talks to a camera all day? These people are weird.